We are live.
Good afternoon. I'm Shanika Smith, the Chair of the Equity and Engagement Committee. I would like to welcome you to the October 13th, 2023 remote meeting. All committee members and staff are participating virtually. To help the audience follow along, I'll state each section of the agenda aloud. We are currently experiencing technical difficulties with public input platform and do not have access. However, the meeting will still be live streamed on the city's YouTube channel. Because of the issue with public input, we are unable to connect live call-in comments. If you would like to make a public comment for today's meeting, please send an email to knoun@asheville.nc.gov, and that will be delivered to the committee members. Today is a specially called meeting to continue our discussion on strategic partnership grants, the grant discussion that we had on September 18th. This is the only item on our agenda today. So without further ado, just give a quick hello to our audience, staff, and committee members. When I call your name, just give a quick hello. Councilwoman Kim Roney.
Good afternoon.
Councilwoman Sage Turner.
Quick hello.
Quick hello, okay. Assistant City Manager Rachel Wood.
Good afternoon.
City Attorney Brad Branham.
Good afternoon.
Director of Community and Economic Development Nikki Reed.
Hello, everyone.
And Economic Development Division Manager Rachel Taylor.
Good afternoon.
All right, our agenda states that we should approve the minutes from our last meeting. Can I have a motion to approve?
Moved. Second.
All right, I'll do a roll call vote for approval. Councilwoman Roney.
Aye.
Councilwoman Turner.
Aye.
And myself, aye. The motion carries, and we'll get into the meat of our discussion. Thank you in advance to staff for taking the time to get all the additional information and do some agency engagement. Much appreciated. You can go into your presentation right now so we can make a decision.
All right, thank you. So yes, I'm Rachel Taylor, the Division Manager for Economic Development, and I'm here today to present funding recommendations for the Strategic Partnership Grant Program. Next slide, please. So on September 19th, this committee discussed options for allocating $50,000 in remaining funds from the first round of the revised Strategic Partnership Grant Program. The committee directed staff to provide additional background information related to the applications from the first round, which occurred in summer 2022, and the second round, which occurred in spring of 2023. Staff prepared a detailed appendix that includes links to all of the materials requested by the committee. The committee also directed staff to conduct additional engagement related to the allocation of the $50,000 available from the previous grant cycle. Staff surveyed applicants and included those responses in the appendix. Staff is seeking recommendations on how to redistribute the $50,000 remaining from the previous grant cycles. Options for consideration include option 1, rolling funds over from the next grant cycle, which will begin accepting applications in December of this year. Option 2, redistribute the $50,000 to the highest scoring applicant from round 2 who has not yet received strategic partnership grant funds or other financial assistance from the city. Option 3 is to redistribute $12,500 to each of the 4 applicants from round 2 that indicated a need in the survey and did not receive funding in rounds 1 or 2. Next slide, please. This slide is a summary of the feedback we received from this committee. So this committee directed staff to provide the following application and award data associated with round 1 and round 2. All applications that were received in both rounds, evaluation rubrics and scores from both rounds, program duration, whether the program was a year-round, academic year, or summer program, program type, whether the application was for a new program, expanding program, or an existing program, the amount that was requested, the amount that was awarded, if applicable, and the amount that was expended, if applicable. The committee also directed staff to survey previous applicants regarding the reallocation of the available $50,000 in prior grant year funds. The requested data and survey responses have been provided as an appendix, which have been distributed via email to the committee and published online as a part of the today's meeting materials. Next slide. So here's a summary of the round one awarded agencies. You can see Umoja Health, Wellness, and Justice Collective was awarded $20,000, and they utilized that entire award. Read to Succeed Asheville was awarded $56,125 and also utilized the full award. Aspire Youth and Family was awarded $20,000 and utilized their full award. And Chosen Pods used the fiscal agent of Western Carolina Rescue Mission to utilize their full award of $80,000. The Christine Avery Learning Center was awarded $25,000 and utilized nearly that full amount. Literacy Together was awarded $36,000 and did not utilize the full amount. However, they did notify staff as early on as possible that they would not utilize that full amount. One Youth at a Time was awarded $35,000 and did not utilize any of the award. This agency, we were unable to come to a finalized, fully executed agreement, which is step one in being able to receive funds with the City of Asheville. Serve to Lead was awarded $52,875 and utilized nearly that full amount. And YTL Training Programs was awarded $50,500 and utilized their full award. In round one, we received 31 total applications, and 16 of those 31 did not apply for funding in round two. The total funds requested in round one were just over 1.9 million, and the median request was 50,000. Next slide. In round two, the awarded agencies were Umoja Health, Wellness, and Justice Collective at 60,000, Read to Succeed Asheville at 40,000, Open Doors Asheville at 126,209. This was for a 2-year award. The ARC of Buncombe County received 50,000, again for a 2-year award. Getting Back to the Basics received 35,000. Black Wall Street received 45,000. In round two, we received 23 applications from different agencies, and 8 agencies applied in round two that did not apply in round one. The total funding requested was just over under 1.7 million, and the median request was 75,000. Next slide. And to provide a brief update about the round one awards, all 6 grant agreements are expected to be under contract and ready for payment by the end of October. Staff from Community and Economic Development, as well as Finance, are providing direct support to agencies to finalize contract materials. Due to the need for finalized contracts, round two grant funds have not yet been distributed to agencies. The amount of staff capacity required to administer the grant program, finalize agreements, and the necessary attachments such as certificates of insurance and process payment informed the recommendation to revise the upcoming application process and cycle. Next slide. So here you can see a side-by-side of the awarded agencies in round one and round two. 9 organizations were funded or awarded in round one and 6 in round two. Umoja, Health, Wellness, and Justice Collective, and Read to Succeed Asheville received awards in both round one and round two. Yep, yes.
Does this, or can you confirm that this might reflect our move to fully funding applications instead of partially funding?
Sorry, I had muted myself. We still need to do additional engagement. We'd like to better understand the impact that a fully funded award had on a granted agency.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right, Katie, next slide. And so staff conducted additional engagement as it related to this potential 3rd round of grant awards. So staff surveyed applicants from round 2 regarding their application and programming. Applicants were asked the following questions, which included under a better understanding of the application, whether it's for an existing program, an expansion, or a new program, the program type, so whether it occurred during the summer, year-round, or academic year, and then how they would use and apply 50,000. So some requested more than that and some less. So we wanted to get at that answer. And then what impact would that amount have on their programming, on the target population? Next slide. 11 unique survey responses were collected. And you can see here we have Asheville Museum of Science, who had applied for program expansion for a year-round programming. Asheville Peak Academy applied for existing program that is academic. Chosen Pods applied for existing programming that was year-round. Christine Avey applied for an expansion that was year-round. Open Doors Asheville applied for an expansion that was academic. Partners Unlimited applied for an existing program in the academic year. Read to Succeed Asheville and Serve to Lead applied for an expansion and for year-round programs. Umoja Health, Wellness, and Justice Collective applied for an expansion for a summer program. And YTL Training Programs applied for an existing program for year-round programming. And YWCA of Asheville and WNC applied for existing program that is academic. Next slide. And so on this slide, you can see the respondents from the survey and whether or not they were awarded in round 1 or round 2, and then the average score from round 2. We didn't include the scores from round 1 since it was a different evaluation panel and it wasn't a fair side-by-side comparison in the scores. You can see Asheville Museum of Science applied in both rounds 1 and 2, but were not yet awarded with an average score of 79. Asheville Peak Academy did not apply in round 1, but they also have not been awarded. Their score was 75.9. Chosen Pods was awarded in round 1 and not in round 2. Their average score was 86.2. Christine Avery Learning Center also received an award in round 1 and not in round 2 with an average score of 82.2%. Open Doors Asheville did not apply in round 1, received an award in round 2, and scored at 94.5%. Partners Unlimited applied for both rounds and has not yet received an award. Their score was 55.4%. Read to Succeed Asheville applied and received awards in both round 1 and round 2 with a score of 95.4%. Serve to Lead was awarded in round 1 and not round 2 with a score of 86.2%. Umoja Health, Wellness, and Justice Collective received awards in round 1 and round 2 with a score of 91.7%. YTL Training Programs received an award in round 1 and not in round 2 with a score of 86.1%. And YWCA of Asheville and WNC applied both rounds in rounds 1 and 2 with a score of 88.9% in round 2. Next slide. All 11 responses indicated that the organizations could and would still use the funding to fulfill programming if awarded. Again, all respondents indicated that the funding would have an impact on school-age children from low to moderate income households. All responses also indicated that their applications related to existing or expanding programs, so we didn't receive any responses related to new programs. The 4 organizations below were the respondents to the survey that were not funded in rounds 1 or round 2. So YWCA of Asheville, Asheville Museum of Science, Asheville Peak Academy, and Partners Unlimited. Next slide. And again, just an update on the upcoming grant process timeline. In November, staff will conduct process improvement and provide updates. Staff will work to refine the application, guidelines, and evaluation criteria. We'll also work to confirm evaluation panel members and the process and provide an update to the Equity Engagement Committee. In December, the application period will open, and in January at the end of January to early February, we'll close the applications and finalize evaluations. In March, the Equity and Engagement Committee will have a vote on award recommendations. Next slide. So option 1 for this funding is staff's recommendation, and that is to redistribute $50,000 to the next award cycle. The next grant cycle is scheduled to begin accepting applications in December of this year, and rolling over the remaining $50,000 would increase the amount available for the next funding cycle. The pros of this option are that it streamlines the process and increases the total funding for the next grant cycle. This timing also accounts for the amount of time required to execute new grant agreements and ultimately make funding available to agencies. The cons of this option are that rolling over the remaining funds does not allow for redistribution of funding from previous grant cycles before the next award cycle, which would occur in March and April of 2024. Next slide. Option 2 is to fund YWCA's Light a Path program. This is the evaluation panel recommendation. This option suggests to redistribute the award to an applicant from the most recent award cycle. So during round 2, the evaluation panel had indicated they would have recommended funding for 7 organizations that will be listed on the next slide if the awards were partially funded. Of the 2 eligible organizations that had also not yet received assistance from the city, the YWCA and Buncombe Partnership for Children, the YWCA's Light a Path Youth Expansion Program scored higher. Available evaluation panel members recommended allocating $50,000 to the YWCA's program. The pros of this option are that it allows for the redistribution of round 1 grant cycle funds based on recommendations from the evaluation panel. The cons are that it's not likely to have a grant agreement finalized or payment issued prior to the next full grant cycle awards. Next slide. And here are a list of the organizations that the evaluation panel had indicated. And so you can see YWCA requested 75 and had a score of 88.9% and had not received any financial assistance through the Strategic Partnership Grant Program or any other funding agreement. Buncombe Partnership for Children requested $100,000 with a score of 80.3% and also had not received funding through this program or other financial assistance. Leaf Global Arts requested $35,000 with a score of 84.6%. This organization receives a direct funding allocation of $40,000 through the budget process. My Daddy Taught Me That requested $100,000 with an average score of 83.8%. The city recently conveyed a building to this organization for $1. YTL Training Programs requested $150,000 with an average score of 86%. This organization received $50,500 in round 1. The Christine Avery Learning Center requested $78,000 with an average score of 82.2%. They received $25,000 in round 1. The Arteria Collective requested $100,000 with a score of 86.8%, and this organization is no longer in operation. Next slide. The third option is to reallocate based on the survey. So this option would redistribute $12,500 to each of the 4 applicants from the most recent award cycle that also responded to the recent survey who have not yet received funding through round 1 or round 2. The pros of this option are that it allows for the redistribution of round 1 grant cycle based on current need and provides resources to agencies not currently receiving city grant assistance. The cons are that dividing the $50,000 could limit impact to individual organizations. The development of 4 new agreements will take considerable time to fully execute, impacting timing to issue payment to agencies. And these 4 agencies are listed below. Next slide. So again, our key takeaways are that we wanted to bring and respond to this committee's request for feedback, and so highlight the information that we provided through the appendix. We also have 3 options for funding for this $50,000. And I think we can move on to questions. Yes, Councilmember Oni.
Well, thank you, Rachel. First, I wanted to say that I appreciate the additional information, and I think some of these documents would be helpful the way that you have them lined up now so that we can move forward. We have like a path forward that's a little more clear. So thank you. I know that took extra time. Maybe more so for round 1 than round 2. Some of the biggest concerns I've heard is, why does the city sometimes step out of our scoring rubrics, whether it's our strategic partnership funds or our ARPA funds? And I hear specifically that when we do this, it weakens our processes and the trust around our processes, and that can cause harm. And I just wanted to name that through my involvement, I also participate in that and acknowledge it. So I wonder, now that we have this information, I'm inclined to go with what I think is the first recommendation. No, whatever the recommendation is, that we move the 50,000 into partnership today, whether it's 1 or 2. There it is, number 2. And then I think we all know that we're going to have too few funds. So we have even less this year than before. And so because of the scarcity narrative that our processes create, and sort of like the pitting all these partners together that are not only our partners, but our partners in our community with each other, my hope is that we could make a recommendation from this committee for staff to help us identify another funding option to increase our funds, so that we don't have to back out of partnership at an even deeper level moving forward. So those are some of the thoughts that I have, and my support for option 2. I'm happy to make a motion when we're ready.
Okay, Sage, let me hear from you. I remember our last meeting, I think you were a little in favor of the 50 rolling over.
I was.
Where are you now?
Mostly because of my understanding that the new process is going to basically run at the same timeline as this remaining 50. Now it sounds like maybe with these 2, they think, are you saying that if we went with option 2, you could execute it faster?
That is not what we're saying.
Okay. So it's still that it would run at the same time. So, and to Kim's point, like when we set out and we say we're going to do this, and here's our application, here's our rubric and stuff, I would rather keep it clean and say we had this money that wasn't utilized. We're going to roll it over. We're going to have a nice, clean process. We're not going to go outside our boundaries. That's still my concern. I'm sensitive to the idea that money's on the table and not in the community, but the reality is the timing is the same. So if the timing is the same and it's double the workload for staff to do 2 things instead of 1 thing, I'm on board with 1 thing.
Yeah, so I'm wondering if the timing would be the same based on the amount of time that we usually track and get all the information we need. Or could there be an exception, and a person can get that information, all the information, to finalize agreements and to pull down the money quicker?
And I can kind of speak to the timing a little bit. The developing the applications and getting to the point where we can fully execute does vary by agency. And so some agencies have some of those required material like certificate of insurance with our standard requirements ready to go quickly. And then some we need to spend more time working with them, having one-on-one conversations and meeting in person and those kinds of things. So the timing varies. And
well, you did have a number at one point. I thought it was like an average of 30 days, 60 days, or maybe I'm making that number up, but I feel like in our last conversation, we were able to say the average response time was maybe 60 days.
So really quick, Rachel, apologies for interjecting myself, but for the round 2, which of course was approved this spring, we will not have fully executed agreements until the end of this month. So it takes several months. We have gotten additional assistance from our finance department. You all may be familiar with Kim Marmon-Sachs, who helps facilitate ARPA. So she is working to help identify some efficiencies on the city's end so that hopefully we can make this process smoother and faster for agencies that we're working with. But a lot of the lag that we're experiencing is just needing agencies to send signatures, needing agencies to get us the required paperwork, and that does require pretty high touch from staff, and it's pretty hands-on, and unfortunately can take upwards of 3 to 4 months. And so, as I said, we're hopeful to get that more efficient from the city side, but we are ultimately relying on the agencies to get those necessary documents and signatures so that the contracts can be fully executed and we can ultimately remit payment.
Okay, so I just wanted to say that to just kind of clear up the conversation before about the allocating the 50 and the next funding cycle lining up. It's a possibility that they might not line up as we expect. But I'm leaning into option 2 partially. I'm leaning into allocating the $50,000 to an organization. But I wanted to address the rubric that we use. I think we've always used it just as a guide, and it's never exact. It's never going to qualify an organization completely for funding. It just gives us information about their funding, their program structure, how responsive they are, and some measurables. And I've always used it as a guide. It's not a final destination for me. And with that being said, I'm looking more towards organizations that directly impact our achievement gap. And since our last award cycle, I have been looking at some EOG data results from a few organizations, and I see that Peak Academy has some outstanding improvement and growth areas in math proficiency and in reading. And for that reason, and I hope some of this information can be shared with each of the committee members. I know myself and Kim have had the privilege of going out to do a site visit at Peak Academy. But my recommendation is to recommend the approval of the allocation of $50,000 in strategic partnership grant funding for Peak Academy.
I think it's so interesting you brought that up, because when we started this conversation, it's who came to mind, because they have this ask on the other side. You know, there's another request out in our world of being on council, and I wondered about connecting these two since they had been an applicant in the past.
Yeah, and I think it is a smart funding approval today to either chop down their request on in other conversations, or because I know we don't have enough money on the ARPA end of conversations. So I think that they are, based on their performance and how they've directly impacted our achievement gap so far in an exceptional way. I would love to fund them and to continue funding them to watch their how they help us meet our goal. So that's my motion.
So in option 4.
Yeah, option 4.
Staff, I'm sorry we put you to all this work when we have our own things too. I mean, I might be able to get behind that because of some conversations I've had this work around the need there and it being a new school and these other asks on board. So if I understand, their ask is around administrative help. Is that right?
I think this ask is a little bit different. I think this ask is to help their staffing situation, staff retention and development, so that they can improve classroom instruction.
Yeah, that's kind of what I meant. Administrative. Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Tim, what do you think?
I still have most of my questions around process. When it comes to this conversation, I'm inclined to support Councilmember Smith's leadership. It is, I think, an important conversation for us to hear today, that our timeline means summer programming isn't going to get funded till October. We might need to move our timelines. It's always an issue. But if we want to fund summer programming, we got to do something about how long it takes. I'm glad Kim Arman-Sachs is involved. Another thing that's come up as we've had so many conversations around rubric is, how does the public see documents? Like when I was trying to see documents throughout this week, some of the documents became less available, and then I have more information than I had before. But I'm always kind of keeping an eye on, does the public get to see what's informing my decision? For example, for round 1, evaluation scores is appendix item number 6. And the round 2 evaluation scores is not available in the same format. So if anyone's trying to follow this conversation, you can go to round 1 and 2 application information, but it's not by score. So I get that when we're talking about stepping outside of our rubric and using that as a guide and choosing a different path, that it can be hard for folks to follow. So I just wanted to name that. But if the motion is for an amended option 2 for a different organization, then I would just follow leadership today.
I'll second that motion, Shanika.
All right, I have a motion and a second on the floor. Do a roll call vote for approval. Councilwoman Turner,
Aye.
Councilwoman Roney,
Aye.
and myself, aye. The motion carries. And I just want to add something else in our future conversations when it comes to our use of rubric. I think we should explain to the public that the information that is gathered or shared or the scoring, it'll give guidance to our final decision. It is not a guarantee, because I don't think we ever really lean hard on the scoring. So that's my recommendation, because in going through, following a lot of philanthropic groups, I've come to find out that sometimes people, they're crafted to tell a great story and to talk about success in a way that some organizations who are doing some of the heavy lifting and directly impacting students and our families, they might not be able to tell the story, but it does not mean that they don't have the fruit, right? Does that make sense? So it kind of leans into, when we lean too heavily on our rubric, it kind of feeds into meritocracy, and that doesn't feel really good to me. Rachel?
Thank you for saying that, Shanika. I guess I am curious how we honor that wisdom and also make sure that we still have community members engaged in our rubricing process if there's not a clear understanding about how we get from the vision we are to the equity we desire.
I think we just say it's a part of the process. It's a part of the decision process, but it should never be seen as a guarantee. Rachel?
Sure. Thank you, Councilmember Smith, and thank you to the full committee for the feedback that you've given today. With regard to the rubric, it's of course within the purview of this committee if you wanted to direct the evaluation panel to solely use the rubric as a guide to influence the recommendations that evaluation panel brings to this committee for consideration. That's certainly an option. So I just wanted to note that as we're talking about who will be on the evaluation committee for this next round of funding, which we are hoping to open applications in December for. And Councilmember Roney, to your point, the intent behind that accelerated schedule really is so that we can hopefully have in spring a much more streamlined process so that funding would be available to agencies that are providing summer programming prior to the start of the summer. That is the reason that Rachel has been working so hard to revise that schedule. The only other note that I wanted to provide is, again, we appreciate the feedback that you've given on the desire for the formatting that you want the materials in, and we will definitely make any materials that the committee wants to make available for public inspection available with future council committee material posting. So that's something we can certainly accommodate, and really appreciate the feedback that you've given so far on the level of specificity that you'd like to see.
Kim, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I'm just thinking about maintaining trust between our organization and community members. I think another thing to consider moving forward is to not put staff in a precarious situation. If we have a conversation like this where we're looking at additional funds, just to bring us all the information and have like a really open process could prevent us from causing issues between our staff and organizations. If it's just a recommendation for one or two, there's an opportunity to leave that pressure, that political pressure on us, might help a little bit moving forward. I don't know what it looks like today because we don't have like a formal presentation about this, but I'm happy to move that we recommend pursuit of additional funding for our strategic partnership funds because we are anticipating greater need but less funds this year.
And I can support that. I don't know if we need a motion in order to give direction to staff in city manager's office. And
It would-
Brad, you just pop back on camera.
It would be helpful if we could have a motion just so that we could have some level of indication on how much support there is from the full committee.
So moved.
All right, I'll second that motion. I'll do a roll call vote for approval. Councilwoman Roney,
Aye.
myself, aye. Sage Turner?
Aye.
Okay, the motion carries to look for additional funding. We can be more supportive to our community. That seems like all we have today. Our public input connection is not working. So if anyone wants to make a comment on our decision or the conversation we have, I'm going to give you an email address so that you can reach out to this committee. That email address is knoun@asheville.nc.gov. And if that's it, Rachel.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Smith. Just wanted to make a quick reminder that this committee is actually meeting again on Tuesday. And on the agenda for Tuesday will be a presentation from Miller 3 on the disparity study. And then we also have an update, the standing update that Brenda Mills provides on reparations as well as the Cease the Harm audit. So we will be reconvening with you shortly on those two items.
All right, thank you all. You have a nice day.
Thanks, everyone.